Hey guys.
Hey, hey, Napalm. Good to see you in the chat. Hey, everybody.
How's it going?
I'm only on my second cup of coffee, so brain's not fully there. What about you, Nicolay? What time is it for you, babe? It's like,
It's 6 p.m. here.
oh.
It's already dark outside.
So you're on at least like your fifth cup of coffee is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Fifth or sixth.
Hooks today eventually. Yes. I want to start. Actually, we're going to talk about routing because we didn't quite get to that yesterday, and I do still want to touch on it. And then we're going to talk about state, and we're going to talk about props. And while we're talking about state, we'll kind of talk about two ways to handle state, which is hooks and old school set state methods. So that's what's on the agenda for today. I shared with you guys, Alyssa and Nikolay, I shared with y'all a repo that I made with some demo stuff so that we could jump right into it today. Did y'all have a chance to clone that and get it on your local?
I have it running already.
No worries. We can do it here. Or no, you do have it ready?
No, I have it.
Yeah, he said he does.
So good.
Yay!
Awesome. And for those of you in the chat, I will drop the link to that and y'all can follow along at home. So there we go. Did that show up? Things are looking a little laggy on my end.
Yes, it did show up.
Perfect. Great. Then yeah. Whenever you're ready, Nicolay, I'd love to have you share your screen and let you kind of drive again.
Sure. Can you see it?
There we go.
All
right. We're up and going. So what I did here was just kind of create a couple more like basic components. So in the same kind of structure that we talked about yesterday, we have our source folder and inside an app folder. And within that, I've created 3 components. One for routing called app router, and then a couple others, homepage and just a secondary page, so that we can take a look at embedding components in each other, routing between different pages, etc. So if you, let's see, is there a way for us to have your browser and your code editor open, or is that?
Yeah, you should be able to just share your whole screen instead of just one window. And that way, whenever you toggle between them. Oh, do you not want to do that?
I will. All right.
No worries then. Welcome back. We're glad you came back for day 2.
Hey.
Yeah.
Oh. Awesome. So here's our demo. And we're going to take a look first at routing. So routing, again, kind of touching back on this, like React is a library, it's not a framework. Routing is something separate that we need to add via React Router in order to hit URLs and navigate to specific pages. So I've gone ahead and already.
So it's not already included when you new up an app. It's
yep. Nope.
Okay.
It is a separate thing, and there are other libraries, I'm sure, that will handle routing in different ways. React Router is one of the most popular, kind of a standard. So that's what we're using. So yeah. You do, in fact, have to have NPM to install it.
The jokes. The jokes.
But I have gone ahead and handled that. NPM all the things. So you can see at the top of this page where we are importing browser router, route, and switch from React Router DOM. And that's the library we're going to be using today. So to create a router, basically, we're going to create a component, and inside the wrapper, it creates a switch statement that works pretty much like a JavaScript switch. Like it's just going to start at the top and kind of work through all the conditions until it hits something that's right. And in this case, it's comparing the URL path. So it's always good to end with just an empty one so that that's kind of your home page, like catch-all. It's a good practice. So if we flip back over to the browser and add a little /page to the end of our localhost.
Salt was saying that he was using React Router DOM to route some templating, and it was so confusing. When he's a React Router DOM, is that just the React Router?
It's the full name of the package. Yeah,
okay.
So it's the same thing. Is there anything specifically that was confusing that maybe we can help clear up? Yeah, it is very different than it was.
Yeah, I know. Can you bump up your font a little bit, Nikolay, on your code?
Yes.
Good call.
Thank
I forgot
you.
about that.
And then, yeah, so it looks so different. App router. So you were saying that you want to end with an empty one.
Yeah. So
is that line 16?
Yeah. So you can see the path there. I went to do the backslash and the camera's flipped. Slashed in the wrong direction. But yeah, because it'll kind of work its way through to whatever. And that's kind of like, if nothing else matches, you'll land there.
Page. And so, okay, so like 14, it says if path equals page, component is page. So like,
yep.
If we go to like the page component, I guess somewhere we're specifying its path.
No, that's what we're specifying the path right there, and we're importing the page component. You can see on line 8 that we've actually imported page into router.
I guess I was just wondering what matches the page component to that, just that it's named page. So like it all like, like let's say I have a page component, but I want its route or its path to be /Alyssa. Like,
yeah, we could do that.
Where is that specified? Because this part is just like, at least in my head, this part is just like the map of the routes, right? That like is like this goes to that, this goes to that, right? Yep. Like
router's handling all of that. So if on line 14 we wanted to change that path to /Alyssa, we could do that right now, and this would still work.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah. Why switch when JavaScript has a switch keyword? Because that's part of how router works. I don't know the like ins and outs specifically of the React router library. I know how to use it. I don't know why they've made the choices that they've made. I assume there must be some kind of advanced functionality in there. But don't know. Good question.
Okay, so I think I get it now. I think mostly it's odd though, because at least from the Angular side, it's just very simple. Like I think I understand how it's working. So
yeah, it's really just we're importing that component and we are adding it to that route when we declare the route. Okay. You can also wrap them like in the same way we've imported the home component and we're wrapping it in that second example. So both work.
Okay.
But that's good if you have kind of more complex components or components that you need to pass properties into. The way to do it the second way is a good way. It's confusing because we haven't talked about properties yet. I know that. This is one of those things like it's hard to choose what to come first because everything kind of like, so.
It makes sense. Just my code brain says use markup. Yeah. That I think Napalm. That's where I'm at with React. It's just really hard for me to even just grok the syntax sometimes because I'm like, what is this? Who is this?
I do feel like React often uses, like, they'll choose words that have associations, so it'd be like, seems like it'll be easier. So it's like, oh, switch, so you know it'll work like a switch statement. Right. Or like, oh, we use class name, so you know it'll work like setting the class name. But in reality, it's doing the same thing in a slightly different way, and they're not like 100% interchangeable. They're just trying to give you a hint like about what it does.
So Nikolay, does this make sense to you? Like, is this like grokkable for you? Are you like, yes, coming from a jQuery world, is this fine?
Well, yeah, it's fine. Why there are two ways to declare the same things? I assume that the second one is more common because if you want to pass some arguments or whatever,
right.
which would be the most common use case, right? So we'll basically end up using only this one, not this.
Yeah, it really depends on whether or not you need to pass anything in.
So if we're not passing, this is just fine. If we are, we're using this one.
Yep.
All right.
So, and yeah, it's one of those, you could do it always one way, and that's all right. I've intentionally kind of chosen different ways to do things here. I'm not sure if that's confusing or helpful, but like after our conversation yesterday, when I made these components, I made one a function and one a class. So that we could take a look at that.
We can see the difference.
So we can see the difference. But yeah, so that being said, let's jump back over into our homepage and we can kind of take a look at that. So
do we need the home or the page?
Yeah. There we go. So yeah, here I wanted to talk a little bit about state. So state is, try to think about the best way. State is data organization. State is handling user inputs. State is the current state of your application. I'm having a hard time defining state, not using the word state. I mean, but that's a similar state, works the same way at a conceptual level in Angular. Says that, how would you define it, Alyssa? I'm curious.
How would you define state? Because state can be like that. It's one of those buzzwords that I'm not in love with because it can even be like in your UI, like the state of your UI, and maybe like when that user signs back in, you want to save that state. So it's got nothing to do with data in that case, but it's like the state of your UI. But yeah, I guess I would say state is anything that needs to persist beyond a page refresh, perhaps. Whether that's data or whether that's UI, maybe. I don't know. What, Nikolay, what do you got? I know you've dealt with state before. Define state, go.
30 seconds.
It's hard. It's so hard. I wouldn't have told you it was hard until we all started trying to do it. Now
I know, right? Come on, chat. Define state. Just in general, what is state? You guys can do it. Ooh,
I
state
like
is
that
a
one.
point that helps you define what you need to store or retrieve. Aztec for the win.
Ooh,
okay,
get out of here.
So what Google says is,
oh my God, you Googled it.
Information about the component's current situation. So it's information about the component's current situation.
Information about a component's current situation. Yeah, I love that.
Because the one thing I kind of wanted to call out was when you were talking about like persisting after a refresh. That's not always necessarily true because that's kind of the difference between like global state or component level state. Sometimes you do, if you're not setting a global state for the entirety of your application, then state can change and you might want it to change based on refresh. So state is hard. State is a weird, big concept to kind of grok.
I know. It's not only weird to grok, but it's like between these different languages, like, right, how did they decide to handle state, or really what we should be honest, what are the 1,200 ways that they decided you can handle state?
Right. Well, and so much of it also comes down to, I think, how your team and your application has chosen to handle state. Because even within React, there's a couple of different approaches to managing your state. Like, and I know Angular is kind of the same way, whether you're managing stuff from like that global state machine somewhere, way up and cascading it down. Angular is weird because state can move in two directions, and that's not how React works. That's also something I want to talk about. React is unidirectional, everything down. So like child components can't push stuff back up in the same way. There's no like
child components can't. Wait, what was that? Can you say that again? Sorry.
State only moves in one direction.
Okay. Which is down.
Which is down.
Okay.
So
but although, I mean, so I loathe statements like that, because if you've got like a form and it is the child of, something, that like, and it needs to like maybe it needs to change like the user's photo everywhere and trickle up, like there has to be a way like of changing, I guess, the root state or the global state, right? So then that can trickle down.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So in React, we call that like lifting up state. And there are ways to do it. But the idea is that child components don't ever pass props like back up to the parents, because that creates like weird mutation and like asynchrony issues. Yep. Hoisting state, it's also called same.
Okay, so you've mentioned a couple of times props, but like for someone who's never heard that word in their life, that's related to state, I'm assuming?
Good call out. Let's go into some code. So, Nikolay, can you swap us back over to our code? Sorry, I shouldn't have shared the screen and then immediately unshared the screen. That was not forward thinking.
Is there a way that because you're in VS Code, right? Is there a way to preview this in VS Code so he doesn't have to switch back and forth? Like, is there a way to run it? Like, have like a faux console? Does anybody in chat know? Let us know, because that'd be really helpful if we can just like preview the, I know that I might be like in too much of a PC world with like Visual Studio doing that for you. But yeah, let us know, chat, if there's a way to do that, because it'd be so helpful. Okay.
Sorry, I was reading this comment, which is a really good one and also a really complex one, about the pros and cons of unidirectional state. So yes, I'd say this is actually a really good summary. I think the way the Angular does it makes it easier to actually move data around, but I also think that comes with that same kind of, it's also too easy to break something. But with React, it's a little bit harder to do it, but your chances of creating weird state bugs is much lower, and nothing sucks to debug like a state bug. So, 6 of one, half dozen of another. So, if you could hop us over to our home component and open the index.js file in there and scroll down a little bit. I've commented out a section there where I have embedded the page component in the home component. If you want to go ahead and uncomment that, because we're going to use that to look at props. So props are how we pass around data outside of kind of the big state machine. Props short for properties, and you can pass them directly into components by setting up something like this. So you'll call the component, and then in this one, there is a prop called name, and we are passing in our name variable. And then if we jump over to our page component index.js, I fooled you. You thought I was going to say jump over to the browser. I pulled one over on you. But we can look at it here too. So this is our page component. Actually, this is a good example too. If you
want to try what Salt suggested when we're back over in VS Code, because there might be a way for us to have both in that view. I don't know where the integrated terminal is, but if you guys do.
But before we swap back over,
no,
actually, no, it's okay. Let's set it up. It'll be good.
It's the terminal literally in VS Code. Okay, so yeah, Nikolay, do you see the terminal? Is that a thing?
Yeah, this is the terminal here, right?
Okay, yeah, and then if you run that, does that open up a view that we can still see, or is that going to just like?
I think it will open the browser again.
Right, I think so too.
I just didn't know if it was like going to be like an isolated browser that's technically under the envelope of VS Code, and so it would show it. Okay.
I can go ahead and share if that's easier. I've got it up on mine as well. I just thought it might help from a learning perspective to be in it yourself. But here.
Oh yeah. So apparently it's a plugin if you prefer. But yeah, I think the reason I think that's a thing is because I've been using Visual Studio too much and it behaves like that. But
that's nice.
I know. There's so many things where like people like in the JavaScript world, they like complain about like, you know, like the .NET world and they're like, ooh, but there's some nice features. I will say it's like a full blown IDE. There's some good to have. Oh, look at your theme. That's so nice.
I just like for things to be cute. Can't help it. So
okay, so yeah, you were showing us that props are like essentially name is a prop in this case.
A prop, right? Okay. Anything that you pass into a component like this is a prop. And if we hop over and look at our page, you can see here, I'm calling this.props.name, and that's referencing the props that I passed in. So, and we can kind of see that in action over here, because when I enter my name here, it's getting saved as name. And it's updating as it's getting passed to the child component. Is that making sense thus far? You have like a question face.
No, I'm good. I was just pondering the next step of like, because how we were talking about it can't go up like from a child to a parent. So I was looking at your child and wondering how you would essentially what you would do, because it doesn't work the other way. So
in general, again, it's kind of one of those situations. There are ways to do it. Usually that's a global state situation. If it's something that's like really, really complex, I'm trying to think about like, there's 20 million ways to do it. I'm trying to think about what makes the most sense. For something that's little like this, you might like create a function in the parent component that updates the state. So like, let's see, function.
So you're importing use state from React.
Sure. Maybe we should talk about state first before we talk about.
Well, I'm so confused because like, what is with the weird way that you're importing it? Like, is that special? Like at the online 3 where it's like with the brackets around use state?
Yeah. So remember yesterday when we were talking about named versus default exports? So that's what the brackets are doing. So in this case, React is a default export and use state is a named export. Okay. So when we import them, we have to call them differently.
Okay.
Yep. Named components from a package. Spot on. So that's the difference there. Now, there are 2 ways to set state. There's kind of the OG way over here using this dot set state. So you can see we've got a class component over here. And we've got this constructor that lives at the top where our props live. And this kind of boilerplate wraps anytime you're going to set up props this way, or state this way. God, state this way. So we set this dot state, and then here we can start setting the current state. So this should actually status. I just can't type. So we've set it a status, and we've got it right now on false. So that's over here. We have a conditional bit of rendering here in the UI that's checking this dot state dot status and determining whether so it's true or it's false. And then down here on a button on click, we're updating our state. So every time a user clicks, we call this dot set state, and then we update the state of status. Should have called that differently because it is a tongue twister. So in this case, I'm just saying update the state of status to whatever like the opposite of now is. So I can just toggle between true and false. So now over here, when we hit the button.
Did it work? Did it toggle?
Yeah, sorry. So
oh, there it is. Okay, I was like,
true.
I was not
false.
seeing the word swap. I was like, wait, what?
True, false. Not just constructor and Superman.
Yeah, so I think that goes back to a JavaScript constructor and super, I assume, right? Where it's just super is essentially calling. So see on line 4 where it says frame extends component. Super good.
Sorry. It's super good.
Component is essentially frame's super. It's what it's its parent, right? And so component has its own constructor. And when you call super, you're saying, I want component's constructor to be called here, everything that it has. And then everything after that is us adding to that constructor's functionality or passing. So like super props is like passing our props to component super constructor, if that makes sense. Maybe that was hella complicated. I don't know. You want to take a stab at it, Kathryn?
Absolutely not. I do. No, I don't think I could do it better than you could, to be honest.
Is that a design pattern? It is how I know JavaScript classes work as far as which ES it is. I'm assuming it's the latest one. I don't know. I really suck at telling people the differences between ES5 and ES6. So if chat wants to hop in, but I do know that it's just because we're extending component.
That's a good summary.
Call the constructor on the base class you inherited from.
Me neither, friend. Although I will say, like, I think this is potentially a divisive hot take. Sometimes when you're first starting, you just need to learn how things work and not necessarily why things work. Like, I think eventually, to improve your programming skills all around, you'll get better. You'll be able to troubleshoot easier the more you really understand the like nitty gritty of why things work. But when you're just jumping in and trying to get things to show up on the screen and like grok kind of basic concepts, it's okay to just kind of be like, this works because I know it has to work this way. Like, and the other stuff will come later. The more you get in and the more you play with code, the more it all starts to make sense. But trying to understand it all in the hypothetical is so hard.
So. I have a question. What the default mean in class? Export default class. Why does it have to be default? Can it be another type?
Yeah, so this is a kind of shorthand way of doing the named and default component exports that were before. So this could be down at the bottom. And I think we saw that pattern when we were looking yesterday. So you can define it and then export it, or as kind of a shorthand, you can do it all in one line, which is what I like to do. But yeah, if you're exporting default, you can just string it all together and save yourself another line down at the bottom. Yeah, it's okay to learn the framework and then learn JavaScript. I agree, actually, which is why I kind of knew like that is a hot take.
Yeah, I was saying, because I've always been told differently, you know, it's like,
I think the trick
from very snobby people, but
I think the trick is you need to learn enough JavaScript to be dangerous, right? You need to learn enough to basically know, you got to know how to define variables. You got to know how to write if loops, you know, or not loops, for loops or while loops and if statements, you know, some of the really, really kind of ground level stuff, because otherwise, even if you know how to set up components, you're not going to be able to do anything inside of them if you don't know how to like set up a function, call a function, you know? But some of the stuff here where it's like, how exactly does super work? Do you need to know? I would argue you don't. I think eventually you should. I'm not saying just like, okay, this is good enough. I'm done learning forever. But when you're starting, you could easily find 20 million things that all connect to each other, and you could spend forever in the book and no time coding, because there will always be something that leads to something else that you should probably learn something else first.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I love that. And I really think, at least that's how it's worked for my learning journey. So I don't know. I don't think, the right way has ever, the perfect learning journey has ever happened for me.
There's no right way. And I find learning so much more interesting and compelling when I can actually create something. Like the idea of reading a book about JavaScript for 3 hours sounds way less fun than getting in and poking at code for 3 hours. Like, it doesn't have, it's okay to fail. It is okay to fail. And if you don't code things, you never get the dopamine rush that comes with your code working. And that's
oh my God,
a crucial part of the programming process.
Seriously. And even though it's like the dumbest thing, like the other day I got, I think it was just like this math, like to run in this console app. And I was like, it did it. Like, I was so excited. I tweeted about it and everyone was excited with me, even though it was like, who's going to do math in this console app with you? Like, I don't care. Like,
it does not matter.
So I'm right there with you. Okay, so we talked about routes and we touched on state. And I know you had, so we're over halfway through, and I wanted to just time check and see on our agenda what was left, because there were so many. I feel like there's so many topics, and there's no way we're going to cover it in 3 days of React. I hate that. Like,
yeah, absolutely not. Like, but the other thing I want to talk about, I want to look at hooks, because that was everyone was hyped about hooks. So we're going to do some hooks. And I want to preface it by saying it's going to do all the same stuff that we're doing here when we're using this method of like setting our state here in the constructor and then updating it with this .setState. Hooks is just kind of I hesitate to say like cleaner, like quicker, cleaner way to do it. And again, kind of as we touched on a little bit yesterday, the big perk is that you can use hooks in a function and you can't use setState in a function. So yeah, this method over here gotta be in a class. But this guy over here, he can live in a function. So if you like to write functions, or if you want consistency in the application, it's important to you that everything is written the same way. Yeah, again, matter of personal preference, 2 ways to do the same thing.
So like if you never used hooks and you were like only using class components in React, would the React community look at you funny?
No, I don't think so. I think hooks are handy. I think more and more we're seeing, especially new stuff, make use of hooks. So like there's some stuff coming in React 18 that's like shipping with some pre-made like React hooks built in. So I think like you're missing out a little bit in terms of like full efficiency. But React has been very opinionated in saying like, we're not depreciating classes. They're not going anywhere. If you like to write stuff this way, you can still write stuff this way. It's not going to go away. And in the same way, like if you have an older application, you don't need to refactor everything. Like, yeah. Yeah. I think, again, kind of the ability to streamline code, to write less lines of code is appealing to a lot of people. And we've seen a bunch of folks shift towards hooks. Some people find them a little bit easier to kind of mentally grok, which is why I wanted to show both methods. Because you get to kind of skip that boilerplatey stuff to update your state. So, yeah. Mix hooks and classes to make people upset? Yes. That's been my approach in each and every demo app thus far.
I thought you said we couldn't use them in classes. Right?
Oh, yeah. I thought you meant like mix using hooks in some components and using classes in some components.
I was like, wait a minute. Did you make
You can't use them together.
I was so excited. Okay.
No. That's fine. Actually, you know what? You might be able, now that I'm thinking about it, I haven't ever tried to use hooks in a class. I wonder if it's like a, all squares are rectangles, not all rectangles are squares kind of situation. I'm not 100% sure. You definitely can't use
Why
setState.
Are we trying to break it? Why are we trying to we always end up in this place where we're like, how can we break this?
Yeah. I don't know. I've never tried to break it.
So I think, you're importing use state, and then you've got this const name, set name, which threw my husband through a loop the first time he tried using hooks, because he was hunting, not even kidding, for the longest time because it was someone else's code that he was coming in on. And he assumed that person had made a set name method somewhere, and he could not find it anywhere. And he was getting so upset. And I was like, I don't know, let's like look at the docs. And then eventually like, we're like, oh God, that's just how hooks work. Yeah. So like, it can be frustrating if you've never seen this before in your life to understand what's happening there. So I didn't know if you wanted to show.
Yeah, because it is a very different pattern than the other way. So what we're doing here, we're setting so this is kind of equivalent to our like this.state.name, like when we're setting up our state. And this is what we're going to call in order to update name. And we're calling use state, and then we're setting the starting value. So in this case, I've just set it to be null. So right now, nothing in state. So down here, we can take a look. Here's our input box, which is this guy over here, where we're asking folks to enter their name. On change, we are having it, we're calling that set name from up here and passing it the target value of this input box. So every time there's a change, we call set name, which updates the state of name.
Globally.
In this component.
In this component. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in this case, it's kind of global because there's only two components and one's inside the other. Okay. So in a technical sense, yes. You're not like wrong.
Yeah. But so it generates state, set, get. Yeah. So that was the part that threw me through a loop, because it's already.
Yep.
They're just, the getters and setters are just there. Like.
Yep. It's already kind of all built in, which again, some people like it. Yep.
All right. How are you feeling about this, Nicolay? Do you love it? Are you like hooks are life?
I'm still not convinced.
It's a little early. That's fair. Like, you just learned something. What's your opinion? It's something that's highly divisive.
I need to know right now, do you love hooks? That's all I'm saying. Like,
yeah, I love them.
Yeah, it's one of those, I think, this kind of stuff is a little bit hard, I think, when you're learning. Because I think the other way, using setState, kind of breaks down the process a little bit more.
This makes more sense, but the other one is like more clearer, like it's shorter. Yeah,
exactly. So like, and I've seen a bunch of things that kind of have that trade-off where it's like sometimes it can be easier to write things out all the way when you're trying to learn them. And then once you've kind of got a firm hold on it, maybe switching over to something like this that makes it faster to write is more beneficial. But when you're starting off, speed's not always the goal. So when did you first fall in love with hooks? I know. Thank goodness we've given you the answer to that question. You could say Tuesday, November 2nd.
Oh my God. That's so
12:44 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah. Yep. Hooks are great. They're powerful. It's just puns. You can sit and debate the nitty-gritty of like what's faster and what's better all day, but as long as you're standardized on what you like and what the other people on your team are writing and it's working well for your use case, then like Godspeed.
So when you hear, because like there's a lot of people like talking about hooks, there's a lot of blog posts about hooks, there's a lot of like, you know, like talks and webinars and things on hooks. Are they just this simple, or does it like go deeper as far as like there are 12 other hooks like that you can use?
There are, and I'll take a minute and tell you that we've got a really cool hooks guide over on Telerik.com. So if you want to take a deeper dive into hooks, they're kind of broken down. We're looking right now at hooks for state. Like this is kind of how we're using them. There's also hooks for context, hooks for reducers,
I
your own hooks. Here's the new hooks that are coming in 18.
Sounds
you can
like
go
hooks are like React's version of NGRX or something, like where it's all of the statey bits, right? Like, is there anything outside of state that you use hooks for, or is it?
No, it's state.
Okay.
So yeah.
Fuel reducers. Like seriously, this makes me a little nauseous because like I hated this part of learning NGRX and like effects and reducers and all. Like it makes me physically ill to go into that side of the world. Like I hate it. Loathe it. I'm like, can't we just go back to Angular JS days? Like, okay, JK. Oh God.
Yeah. And again, that's one of those, like, state is also one of those things that can get as complex as you want it. Like, there are React Redux. I mean, yes, I love that the first hit is tutorial because it's complicated.
I'd say yes and no, Eli, because like a service in Angular is responsible for all of your, you know, like your API calls. So in a way, yes, but like a service in Angular has no concept of an effect. It has no concept of a reducer. Right. And so that's where I was saying hooks are essentially a built-in version of state management that React has decided to like incorporate and use. Whereas Angular is like, not everybody likes to use reducers and effects. Not everybody likes to go that direction for their data and their state management. And so they kind of left it open and there is no officially recommended way. Like you can go that far and use NGRX, or you can just use RxJS and build out your own in your services. So
this is very similar because all the like reducers and stuff are looped into if you're using Redux. And even there's a section here I was trying to find because there's a whole section that's like, do I really need it? And they're like, you might not. Like, you could just not. You could use it if you don't need it.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually really good. I can't find it here.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's, in general, that's a good thing to think about is like, start with what's built in until you hit a point of failure and then start looking at what can I add to solve this problem. Like, because if you can just handle state management with the stuff that's right here. If you can handle everything with hooked, if you can set up kind of a global state that cascades down through your simple application, then you might not need a big state management library. And that adds a huge level of complexity to your application. And I think more people reach for it than necessarily need it. I think that can be common in a lot of technologies.
So I think we touched on this question from chat a little bit, but I didn't know if you wanted to address it. And I think it's just, I don't know, at least from what I've learned so far, if you want a class component versus a functional, like a, what do you call them? Functional components, a function component.
Yeah.
I would say, do you want to use hooks or not? Could be a good indicator of like, because we've already talked about how you don't use hooks inside of class components. So if you wanted to use them, I'd say you probably have to go functional. I don't know. Is there another reason, Kathryn, that you can think of to use one versus the other?
Again, that's one of those things that it used to be more of a firm divide, because it used to be that if you needed to use state, you had to use a class component. And so in React previously, and if you look on the internet, there might still be some stuff out there that's kind of talking about class versus function components along the lines of like a, smart versus presentational component. And for a long time, that was kind of the rule. Now with state in all of them, like it doesn't matter. And we did have a good debate about this yesterday. But at the end of the day, it comes down to preference. And even here, I saw a couple of people like, I like classes and I like, that I forget where the comment was, but they were talking about how much they appreciate writing in classes. And some people it's just easier, quicker to write everything function based. It's up to you. It's up to your team. Yep. Don't start with the state management library. Absolutely don't. And if you're just starting to learn React, don't learn React Redux. Don't try it yet. It's incredibly complex. Maybe that oversold it. It is understandable, but if you're trying to learn it at the same time as you're trying to learn React, you're going to be in for a hard time. Fair. So in this case, you're just talking about lifecycle stuff, like component did mount and stuff, I'm supposing. And yeah, there's a little bit of a difference there. But yep, cool. We do unfortunately have to wrap up at the hour today. So we've got just 9 more minutes left. Were there any other questions? I know we breezed through a ton today. It was just haha, state in 30 minutes. Good luck. But I figured I'd throw out one last call for questions before we swap over. And we're not even ending the stream, right? We're going right into JS Girl in a .NET world.
Yeah, no. So at the top of the hour, I'm bringing on a guest, Justin Schwarzenberger, friend from the Angular community, but also with a apparent .NET past. So we're just going to launch right into JavaScript Girl in a .NET world in 8 minutes. But I definitely want to leave space, though, for any convo about this. Nikolay, how are you feeling so far with, we've had a couple hours so far of React development and showing you things. What are your thoughts so far?
I'm definitely expanding my knowledge here. It's interesting, yeah. I think I personally prefer the functional components. I think they look I don't know, more readable, let's say. So when you open the component, I think it's important to read the code faster instead of going deeper.
I think there's a lot of truth in that skimmability is important. Yeah. I'm dying at this. I promise when we were laughing, we weren't laughing at you. We were laughing at this comment.
Yeah, Fuel had me laughing.
Yeah, just jump ship entirely.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I have seen a lot of object-oriented folks lean towards classes. So.
Yeah, Salt bringing in the coffee script jokes. Okay, so tell us. Oh, thank you, Ed. We are live. Cool. So tell us what tomorrow is, because we have one last day on our React 101 series. And
it's true. We're gonna look a little bit about kind of that smart versus presentational components divide, and kind of if that still matters and how that still matters. Now we're going to take a look at debugging using the React dev tools and how you can kind of check the contents of your state and your props kind of from the dev tool stuff, so that you're not just like console logging everything all the time. And then honestly, I figured we'd kind of leave it open.
So yes, okay, there's like, we joke, but I do that quite often. Like when there's like bugs, I'm like dependency bugs, like that's one of the first things I reach for. I'm just like, goodbye. Reinstall. Yeah, I do that a lot. Probably more than I should. But I mean, 50-50, it's going to fix it. So
60% of the time it works every time.
Oh my gosh. What's LeftPad?
Someone here put a good summary of LeftPad, which was like there was this little tiny library that was basically like adding a small amount of padding on like one side. But it got referenced in something that got referenced in something that got referenced in something, dependencies all the way, and then he got into some kind of fight, I forget over what, about some other package. It wasn't even LeftPad, and he pulled everything he'd ever written out of the library. Like he pulled everything out of npm, and because everything was calling things that used LeftPad, it took down like half the internet for a full like day. It was honestly incredible.
I've heard of this. Yeah,
it was a naming copyright issue. That's what it was, but not on LeftPad, on another library of his, and just like,
wow,
he yanked them all.
Oh my gosh.
It was incredible.
All right, I'm going to see if I can, because I'm going to hop off the stream and rejoin real quick. I want to see if restarting my browser fixes it, because I think it was just me is what Ed was saying. So I'll be right back.
Okay. Is it screw you guys, I'm going home? Yes, he absolutely did. HTML and CSS? You'll brook no argument for me, and they definitely have less dependencies. But no, I think at the end of the day, I love to write CSS. React is fun, but if I could write CSS forever, I would do just that, I think. There's a hot take. You're back.
Chat. I don't know. We'll see. They want to know what they're behind you.
Nothing is the answer. It's a dry erase board, but that sticker's been on there for so long, I don't think it'll come off anymore. But it used to be, I used to work in an office, like a real office with other people many moons ago. And I got this dry erase board so that other people could write on it, and I stuck it to the outside of my cube. I've been working from home for like 5 years now, so I think that censored sticker is firmly in place. You'll just have to use your imagination. If I'd known I was going to be like streaming and stuff, I would have just left it open and I could write something new in it every time I'm on.
Oh my god, yeah, to just change it.
I'll have to like chip the sticker off so that I can now take recommendations from chat for my Damn It Jim poster.
Well, thank you, Kathryn, so much for teaching us, and Nikolay for coming on and learning with me. So far, I have I think tripled my knowledge of what I knew about React. So it's been productive.
Good. I'm glad. It's been fun.
Yeah, it was.
tomorrow, same time, same channel, we're going to be wrapping up our React series. So come back, come hang out.